All right, well, it is 9 o'clock. Good morning, everyone. I just started recording, so I just wanted to let you know that um, on behalf of the ICHRIE NENA Board of Directors, I want to welcome you to this Rise and Grind. It'll be the last of 2021, but we have a great slate for going into 2022. So we hope you'll be back for more, but welcome. We'll be talking about enrollment trends and also ideas of how to boost enrollment, particularly focusing on partnerships. In this world we're living in, how do we make it through? It's through partnerships. And we're going to start off with an example from Maine. I'm Tracy Michaud. I'm assistant professor of tourism and hospitality at the University of Southern Maine. And I have with me Matt Lewis and Derek Fassett of Hospitality Maine, an organization in the state that has started a really great initiative working with community colleges, but also we're starting conversations at the university level that I think is going to help us boost enrollment, but really has a premise of the industry working in our classrooms and us honoring and figuring out ways of being able to help students earn credits through some of their job training that they get independently. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to them and thank them for coming. They'll talk for about 15 minutes and then we'll open it up, and we want to hear what your enrollment trends are, your ideas of how you've been boosting. Just as a quick FYI, I looked at our enrollment a couple of days ago. While 2020, we decreased by almost half. A lot of our students took time off during that time. This, as of a couple of days ago, we are seeing that swing back. And so we've increased about 50%. We're definitely not where we were before in enrollments, but we have started to see a positive trend, in part maybe because we are a nature tourism destination in the state, and we actually had the highest numbers of travelers and income coming into the state during COVID. And I know that that's maybe not typical, but that's where we are. And I'll use that as the preface to let Matt and Derek talk about their program, and then we'll want to hear what's going on throughout the United States and beyond if we have anyone else from beyond the US. So welcome everyone, and take it away, Matt and Derek.
Good morning, Tracy. Thank you so much for having us join you this morning. Nice to see everyone. I'm the president of Hospitality Maine, and I'm joined with Derek Fassett, who is our Education and Workforce Development Director. And I just want to give a little background. About, I guess, 6 weeks ago, maybe, Tracy, you and we met at the Visit Portland board meeting. And I know that you had worked very closely with Steve Hewins, the past president of Hospitality Maine, and many of you know Steve, and with Greg Dougal, who is still our outstanding government affairs director. And I mentioned to Tracy that we would be, as we had always offered, to join her at the school, to join for career days or have receptions there to talk about hospitality careers, because they are so important to the state of Maine, as you all know. So I've been on board for about 10 months. I moved from California to take the position after living all of my adult life since college in California, but I saw a wonderful opportunity here, and I've really been enjoying Maine. It's a beautiful, beautiful state. And Steve Hewins, who remained on our staff for about 7 months of my first 10 months, took over the workforce development effort and put through a plan called the Dirigo 2025 plan that is, I think, getting a lot of very positive play and very positive feedback. So Steve stayed on until his plan was adopted by our board of directors. And part of that adoption was Steve would be retiring and a full-time workforce development director would be hired. And after a search, we came to find a candidate named Derek Fassett, who is on the call. Derek.
Good morning.
and he's going to give the details about the plan. But what was interesting about Derek coming forward was he came from a background where I think Hospitality Maine had not focused on as much in the past. Military background, veteran background. He had a lot of connections with the Department of Labor, and he had worked with incarcerated.
You just went on mute.
Sorry. He had worked with incarcerated individuals that once upon their release will need opportunities for employment, which is an area that some employers are utilizing in the state. So the plan was adopted. Derek came on board, and he has been a lightning rod for this effort in 3 months. And you hit it, Tracy, with talking about the partnerships. This plan is not successful without partnerships across the state, and they are partnerships in education and government, Department of Labor, the community colleges, the media, many factors to it. So before I turn it over to Derek for the plan, part of our effort is to go after markets that we may not have focused on as much for the development of some of these initiatives. Obviously, meeting students in junior high school and high school to talk about hospitality careers. And it's also to go to persons of color in the state, because that market is such an important part of the hospitality. It's going to the LGBTQ market, and we know that is a huge component of the hospitality arena. So we will be focusing in areas where we may not have been as focused in the past. But certainly education is the top priority. But to fill all of these jobs in the state in hospitality, we have to look in some new areas and focus on some of these new areas. So I want to just say that hospitality is important to me. It's important to everyone on our staff. I have a long career in hospitality, in hotels and convention and visit, what we used to call convention and visitors bureaus and tourism development. Many of my professional friends have long and established careers in hospitality, and they're fantastic people to know. And so you can count on us to be promoting hospitality as a very positive career opportunity at every level of a person's career, from student all the way to seniors who might need to round out their career for an extra 3 or 4 years. There are opportunities for them as well. So thank you again, Tracy, for having us on. I'd like to introduce Derek to talk about the plan. Before I do, one quick note on the plan that Steve Hewins put together. When I was at the State Hotel and Restaurant Association meeting this summer and the plan had been released, both the Maryland State Hotel president and the New Hampshire State Hotel president came up to me and said that they essentially would be duplicating this plan. It was that good. And so it is, I think, it's a great plan, and I think it sets us up for the future. And Hospitality Maine will be working for many years in workforce development. So Derek, please take it away. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt. Good morning, everybody.
Thanks, Matt. And Derek, before you go, can I just ask everybody to mute if you're not talking? It just helps with a little bit of the feedback. So thanks. And you got about 10 minutes, Derek. Thanks.
All right. So as Matt mentioned, Steve Hewins put together a very comprehensive and well-written plan that basically broke down our efforts into these 7 priorities. Many of these priorities you will have seen as they've been topics of discussion in the workforce arena for ever, basically. Especially primary, secondary education, and higher education, and job training, those first 3. So diversity and inclusion, hot topic for everybody these days. Continuing education, how do you keep things going? Research and development and the new options, and then a strong team, of which I am the first hire. If you've all had an opportunity to review this plan, you've probably seen these, but I'm sure you've also seen MDOLs, ARPA initiatives spoken about throughout their listening sessions and through some of the presentations that they've had recently. I put them on the screen with a little purple triangle next to all the ones that basically directly align with the plan that Steve Hewins put together. And you can see there's quite a few of them there. At least half of these bullets are in direct alignment with the plan. So how do we execute a plan like this? It's very comprehensive. It covers a lot of ground. Obviously, we have some time to fulfill it. It wasn't like a 6-month plan. It was a multi-year plan. But essentially, like Tracy and Matt both mentioned, this is going to come down to partnerships and working together, because every industry is feeling this kind of pressure. Every institution of higher education and pre and post-secondary educations are feeling the pressure to create viable partnerships and pathways into every industry. So this is my broken down 5-stage pathway and pipeline plan. I have a larger slide that is a kind of scary looking, so I don't usually share that one. I'd like to make it poster size someday because there's a lot of boxes and moving parts on it. But essentially it breaks down to these 5 steps. We create a partnership with a state agency that can act as essentially a pre-apprenticeship or training ground for folks that are interested in the hospitality industry. And as mentioned, a lot of these are in labor pools that we may not have normally engaged with. So for example, the middle of November, we had a virtual event where 5 of the Department of Corrections facilities around the state that have culinary and industrial kitchen and other kinds of hospitality training on site for their pre-release population came on and briefed our membership on what they offer, what their training programs involved, and how they can connect with them to make a coordinated effort to access this labor pool. And then we gave our membership an opportunity to get on and give a 3 to 5 minute pitch about their business and their potential hiring needs so that they could connect offline and make a connection to access that labor pool and have folks come directly out into a viable job. In a lot of cases, these folks that were getting on to talk about their business had on-site housing that the Department of Corrections weren't aware of. And the facility, the membership weren't aware of a lot of what the Department of Corrections was doing. So a lot of it is just educating both sides on what's available. The next piece that goes into that is kind of my wheelhouse, and that's setting up programming to help facilitate the whole thing. So a lot of the partners that we link up with are going to have stuff of their own that they're already doing, like the programs that the Department of Corrections has and the programs that Goodwill facilitates with their workforce solutions and adult ed. All of these partners come with training that they already do. How do you get that to engage with what you would like to see for the future? And that's building more programs so that people can engage, come in, enter into those programs, have a continued pathway and career progression with additional training representative of each of those stages. So right now, Hospitality Maine is actually a sponsor of 2 registered apprenticeships. We have one on the restaurant side for line cook and one on the lodging side for Hospitality Services 1, which is basically front desk with a little bit of back end stuff thrown into the mix for basic knowledge. But they're just 2 entry-level programs. So I'm working with right now mostly the community colleges to create some additional layers to that. So there's a career progression component to it. Where do you go from the front desk? Do you become the assistant manager? Do you become the lodging manager after that? Or on the restaurant side, you become the sous chef or the kitchen manager and then eventually move on to become a restaurant manager. Well, we've also got allied members in our membership that support the industry, and they're in desperate need of everything from HVAC to warehouse managers to CDL drivers. So complete package on program development. And that's just layer 1. Registered apprenticeship makes a good layer 1 because it aligns with a lot of WIOA requirements and other state programming. But where do you take it beyond that? Well, one of those other markets that Matt specifically mentioned is the veteran community. A registered apprenticeship can essentially be rubber stamped by the VA to then become GI Bill compliant. And now you've got a massive hiring and retention tool because any apprentice that also has GI Bill eligibility can get their housing allowance for being in that program tax-free on top of their paycheck. and is tied to the employer, which means the next guy down the street can't poach them for an extra dollar more because they'd lose that benefit. And in the Portland area, that comes out to roughly $2,000 tax-free on top of their paycheck monthly. That's a good retention perk. If you lose them at the end of the program, then there's other things going on, like potentially work culture and things of that nature that we can help discuss if that's becoming a problem. So that becomes the entire pathway. You partner up with somebody, you explore what they're already doing, they engage with the industry, get hired somewhere, get moved into a program that allows for continued professional growth, and then hopefully stay in the industry and become mentors for the next group coming in behind them. Because as they move up the ladder, that produces an industry vacuum to pull in the next entry level group. Kind of ambitious. We're looking to partner with at least 5 people by March and have at least 6 fully registered and approved programs by March as well. I think at some point this will hit critical mass and move beyond that. But this first group may have a focus on the community colleges to create a basic progression, but then what? Most of the community colleges have connection points with the 4-year universities around the state where people can transfer in. The 4-year universities also have very dynamic hospitality programs of their own that may lead into completely different directions, all the way up to executive leadership within the industry. Sustainable is a big hot topic these days. So sustainable hospitality leadership is something that's coming up. Tracy and I have already discussed potentially working on programs of that nature together. And as was indicated, if university and college programming is built into these programs, and that will drive enrollment on your side, but it'll also drive vetted and very relevant training for the people engaging in these programs, and hopefully provide all of that experience and leadership to the companies that they're attached to. So that's it in a nutshell. I could probably keep talking forever about it because there's a lot of rabbit holes to run down when we're talking about this sort of thing, but the partnership is key.
Great. Thank you so much. What a great overview. I'll open it up to questions to see if anyone has any questions of Matt or Derek. I can get us started while people think. When it comes, oh, sorry, Lily. Yes, I see your hand there. Great. Good.
Well, I figured I'd break the seal, you know.
You got it.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, Hospitality Maine. I think it's really great. I actually spend half of my time in Maine because my other half lives in Maine. So I know Maine, and we live in Westbrook. So I know Maine super well. I think a thing that I have generally struggled with is finding really great industry partners, because a lot of the times they have mentors or they have somebody who's in the operation that signs on, but then because of the turnover rate and the way that things happen, the next person or somebody else doesn't have that same memo. So how are you able to make that apprenticeship opportunity kind of sustainable and successful and make sure it's consistent? I think that's something that we've certainly really struggled with, depending on, like, some chefs are great teachers and some really are not. So, it's very tough.
Yep. That's always a challenge. Employer engagement is a challenge right from the beginning. And one of the biggest challenges I foresee for us is not the development of a lot of this, but the sustainability piece of it. It's like you were saying, it's a lot of times much easier to initially set up a program, but then what happens? Like sometimes it flounders or they're not successful with it immediately and there's a piece of turnover, and then the next person might not even be aware that they have a program. One of the strengths that I brought with me was, as Matt mentioned, I have a lot of ties to the Department of Labor, and I actually worked in the apprenticeship office under Joan Dolan directly, who's the director of apprenticeship for the state, and did many of the inspections and did much of the outreach. So that will be instrumental in hoping to hold all of this together as it moves forward. The good piece is some of our partners, like the Department of Corrections, are very highly motivated and invested in making this happen and have apprenticeships of their own internally that Scott de Moranville is now responsible for extending those programs through every facility across the whole state. So they have some great investment in making sure it works. And a lot of the folks that I'm engaging with, the ones that want to do an Explorer apprenticeship, have a certain amount of bandwidth within their organization to do it. Usually it's a little harder for the small mom and pop shops, especially when you're talking about some place that might have 3 employees, to let that person go for a certain amount of time to actually go and do the coursework training. That can be a challenge for them. So typically this is something that the larger folks are interested in pursuing, which does help a little bit, because then you have a point person that you can usually harass a little bit more than the owner, who's going to be exorbitantly busy.
Tracy, I'd like to add a few more comments to that. Lily, the long-term plan, the Dirigo 2025 plan, is to eventually hire 1 to potentially 3 staff members that would work under Derek. And strategically, we would want to place them across the state. Someone in northern, someone southern. And I think part of that is to build the relationships and the partnerships that you're talking about, because Maine is so large, sometimes it's hard to build, and as we all know, it's harder to build those relationships when someone is up in Belfast or someone is down in New York. So I think that's part of addressing part of where you're going with that question. And the other part I wanted to reiterate is that I told Tracy, and we have a commitment to all of you, that if you would like us to come and speak to your students, if you would like to have a reception and have us join you, if you would like us to help you in some way with your students in advocating hospitality, I can do that. Derek can do that. Greg Dougal can do that. Becky could do that on our staff. Kathleen could do it. So whether, changes will happen, but our staff is committed to that moving forward. So I just wanted to make sure you all knew that was a commitment of ours.
Yep. And our initial discussions have kind of tailored toward potentially aligning these future folks with the regional workforce boards in the state so that they become regional experts in their different areas.
Great. And actually, just for those that aren't from Maine, Dirigo is the Maine logo that means I lead. And so in case you didn't know that, some of you might not, we all know that if you're from Maine, but so that's the I lead 2025 sort of, that's why it was called that, in case you were like, what is that weird word? And I will say, Lily, like a lot of schools, we have required internships and whatnot. And as much as we're underfunded and underinvested in a lot of ways, the school has hired as a whole, the whole university, they do hire coordinators that are in charge of developing the relationships, assessing sites, working when there's issues. And so I have found that over the last few years to be invaluable for some of the things you're talking about whenever there's problems, or just to be able to scope out and build the relationship. That stuff takes a lot of time. And we do have in all of our schools within the university internship coordinators that is their sole job, is making that connection. And so it's a big investment, but it reaps rewards when it comes to this stuff.
I don't want to take up more time, but I think for me, when I was in Massachusetts and now I'm in New York, the problem I find is a lot of students want to work for small mom and pop places, and they just don't provide the structure, or someone will sign on. So like in Massachusetts, for example, if we had a student who wanted to work at the Kowloon, which is like a huge tiki bar-y Chinese American place, that was great. The owner, nicest guy in the world, but the managers didn't want to put in the time. And so that was for us the biggest issue. So what ended up happening is our students inherently started going to the Wegmans of the world and the larger structural places. And then we get attacked, especially in Massachusetts, we got attacked for saying like, oh, well, you're not supporting small businesses. And it's like, it's really tough. So I wasn't looking for, obviously an answer. There's no real good answer, but it's just one of those things where it's like, how do you manage the beast, right? So.
Yeah, this is this is where like the advocacy at the university level, that if you want to do that, especially in rural states where that's where most students are going to go, it's important we connect with the small mom and pops, but it just takes time. It takes a lot of time. And so there's got to be some support and investment to help make that happen. But great. Anybody else have questions and or just want to share your enrollment trends, some of your ideas? That'd be great. Donna, I see your hand up, and then David.
Good morning. Thank you, Tracy, and thank you for presenting this morning. I think, Matt, in your intro, you started to rattle off a couple of different partnerships, and I thought I heard either some type of maybe radio or promotion, or I'm not sure. It was quick. It was a quick list, but what would a coordinated campaign, public relations campaign look like, and who would those partners be, and what role can higher ed play in something like that? Because honestly, I feel like we need a coordinated message. And I know I call it the mothership, that our ICHRIE organization is looking into, working with the American Hotel and Lodging Association, the National Restaurant Association. So those groups would be key. I would throw that out to anyone, but particularly Matt and Derek, since you're working on something similar.
I think what I was meaning, Donna, was we get requests for interviews through our offices, through the various media, television, radio, that sort of thing. And we do, I would say I probably have 5 to 10 interviews a week. And as Steve Hewins did, and as Greg Dougal still does, and Derek started to get interviews as well. I think that's what I was meaning in terms of building partnerships with those people, because what we see is we get a lot of the same reporters that reach out to us. And so there is a partnership component and a likability, relationship with that as well. I think that's what I was meaning, but certainly we are members of the Hotel and Lodging Association. We go to their conference, their conferences twice a year. They're big partners for us. There is a lot more that they want to do for us, but we have to, that means they get their footprint into it, and you know how that all works. So we have to be careful with ferreting that all out. But that's a very good suggestion in terms of that partnership.
I will say one of a really cool program that the State Office of Tourism coordinated this past summer was a Be Kind campaign to let people know everybody's short-staffed. We're all having issues. We're all tired of COVID. Please be patient. Please be kind, because as I'm sure you've heard all the stories. It's been particularly rough in the service industry. And like I said, we had actually some of our highest numbers of people visiting despite being short-staffed and all that. And so the State Office of Tourism, at this kind of bigger level, some of these organizations, I think reaching out about coordinating those types of campaigns is important. Our voice saying, hey, we need help here, because it does need to come from a kind of a bigger level. And even in our work that we want to go forward with, part of what I've factored in is a marketing budget to tell people, hey, I know that the industry, it's been rough, but there's a lot of jobs available now. And the pay is really has increased a lot. I mean, there's been some silver linings, I think, for our potential students going into the industry in terms of understanding that there's going to be probably a lot better pay and benefits and whatnot if you go in at this point. And a marketing campaign is really vital to get the word out, because I don't think people really understand that yet.
We did actually do a campaign that ran from April to June of this year called the Great Maine Comeback, that was dedicated to the Hospitality Maine, coming from Hospitality Maine. That generated like 4.5 million, mostly media type hits between radio and social media and LinkedIn, and a big adjustment specific page on our website that housed it. So it did go out quite a bit. It included videos from various companies that talked about what they were doing and what some of their jobs were, to just try to get that awareness that you were just talking about out there.
David, did you have something? And then Noel?
Yes. So I want to commend you on everything that you have been sharing and what you're doing in Maine. And I'm just trying, and maybe I missed something, but to process how you are operating versus what we have in Pennsylvania. And so I'm trying to learn, like, how long have you been in existence? Where's your funding coming from? Do you have a Maine Restaurant and Lodging Association that you report to, or are you, because here everything is done by the PRLA. So I'm just trying to, I'm an analyzer, and I'm trying to analyze what you're doing in Maine versus how this might be able to fit into the other states that are in NENA. And it's not, I haven't analyzed that yet.
A great question. Thank you, David. John Longstreet is the president of Pennsylvania Hotel and Restaurant Association. And essentially,
yes,
his budget is a lot higher than ours, but we essentially do have the same role. So Hospitality Maine is the Maine Hotel and Restaurant Association. Our name is called Hospitality Maine, though. And that is because about 4 years ago, the Maine Innkeepers Association and the Maine Restaurant Association, which were separate organizations, merged together. So that's where the name Hospitality Maine came from. The organization itself is much older than that. They're the two organizations, the innkeepers and the restaurants. But we are a membership-based organization, David. We get our funding from members, of which we have about 1,400 members, which are an even split of hotels, restaurants, and allied members. Allied members are members that are not necessarily in the hospitality arena, but share the vision and have business to be had with hotels and restaurants. So I go to a lot of the same conferences that John does. I see him a lot. John Longstreet has my role in Pennsylvania. He's an industry veteran and incredibly highly well respected. I think a former elected official in your state, if I'm not mistaken, David. So
I think he was a former restaurant CEO.
Yeah, I think he was also an elected member of the state Congress in Pennsylvania.
Okay, so I've now pieced it all together. So we've basically here we've kind of got John Longstreet and Hope Sterner. So got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Anyone want to share, ideas, other partnerships that they might have? Oh, sorry, Noel, I didn't even let you go.
No, Tracy, it ties right into that. I was just wondering, with some of these partnerships, has anyone done any work in which they've actually partnered with the businesses in which that we're kind of enticing and or creating cohort programs for the current incumbent workforce that might not even have a BA degree? And, we get enrollments and they're getting developed talent. Has anyone led or started to develop that type of partnership, especially with some of these larger organizations? I'm not sure how many of you are near larger city centers or large hotel chains that, have tuition reimbursement, if anybody has tried something like that.
I could tell you just this week, Matt and I both signed a MOU/workforce development agreement with one of our larger members, who is a managing company that has quite a large portfolio throughout the state and extends beyond the state to implement a lot of what we just went over. And here in Maine in particular, there's a lot of higher education funding options available, but one of the more notable ones that has recently kind of hit a critical mass was the Maine Workforce Development Compact, housed by the Workforce Office of the Maine Community Colleges, which has about $60 million in it. that they're intending to help offset their own costs. But there's a lot of other options out there as well. Specifically with the university, they just launched a new innovation internship program where for 2022, students that are going to be enrolled in this will have the ability to work full-time, part-time, or project-based hours for an internship with a company. And then that company, depending on their scope and size, will have some subsidy options to potentially pay up to 75% of that internship cost.
Okay. Yeah, we have a grant that's similar to that, that's carried out by more or less our continuing education department or our community college partners in our area. I was just wondering to try to generate some enrollment. I mean, it's really the perfect feeder, right? I mean, we think about hospitality, and the challenge with hospitality is that a high proportion of it truly is an unskilled workforce, right? You don't have to have a college degree, but if we could develop that workforce, right, that creates our pipeline, and then in turn, right, it develops the talent pipeline for our industry partners. So I just wonder if anybody has thought of that, and if so, have they tried to pursue that, or even create 4-credit certificate programs that could be applied toward a bachelor's degree, you know, to try or pilot something. And I guess Matt and Derek, you know, to your partners having the ear, I mean, has that been ever something that has been discussed or talked about, you know, developing that BA degree, or is that truly not something of value? And it would be more of just a credit program that, you know, if someone wanted to continue to earn, it would be for their own efficacy versus we value it in the industry. Because I think that's also maybe another challenge. Do we value BAs in the industry for all roles? And maybe you can provide some insights on that.
Every program that I'm working on will utilize an institution of higher education in some capacity. So these initial ones that I was saying, where I want to have 3 career progression tiers on the lodging side and 3 on the restaurant side, I'm specifically targeting the community colleges that have existing programs to slice up their curriculum into bite-sized certification level credit hours that will align with whichever tier we're talking about. So for example, York Community College has a hospitality services 1 certification that's 18 credits that'll make the basis for our tier 2 program. And then BAs are definitely relevant depending on which occupation you're talking about. So for example, any kind of executive leader in the sustainability area, sustainability management, development will require the institution of 4-year degree levels to really attain that knowledge. So we're looking to partner up in those areas as well. But everything I'm building is going to use college, university, private, state to some degree. The pre-apprenticeships I'm targeting to engage as the pipeline for that all come with various amounts of training that they already do, like the adult eds of the world who have industry-focused English language learning, and the culinary programs through the Department of Corrections. So there's a feeder organization that comes in there, and then those that want to pursue the higher levels of programming will obviously be engaging with enrollments.
Thank you, Derek and Matt. And I guess my last question, this is probably to my colleagues here, which is, has anyone thought of, or what does it make sense hearing you say like executive and sustainability? Does anyone have like an executive BA program, like something for a full working professional, where maybe we're based on work experience hours, it's allocating a portion of courses or anything like that? I know by us, I think it's in Pennsylvania. So maybe David, you're familiar with Thomas Edison, they do that, but has anyone else leveraged anything like that and seen it drive enrollment?
So I can speak to that. Sure. So Newbury College, which is now closed, so I don't know how great a model this was, but so we were maybe like a half a mile from Boston College, which does all of their campus dining in-house. And so what we would do is we had kind of adult continuing education and culinary classes for the culinary management degree that we offered on the weekends. And so we worked really closely with BC, and they would reimburse their tuition, and they would come on the weekends and do these like 10-hour classes for 5 weekends and do that. So it actually did help, but it wasn't super consistent. I think a lot of them didn't necessarily take advantage of that. And obviously BC offered them their own degrees. So this was only for people who wanted hospitality, which was a major obviously not offered at BC. So it was good, but it was also really challenging to have to schedule and to pay for those classes and those instructors separately. So I don't know that we were ever profitable on that. You know, I think we barely broke even. And so that was a real challenge a lot of the time. But I mean, so long as we were there, it worked. And the HR department and the executive chefs were all super supportive of the program, and always made sure to schedule those students off those days. So there was some success.
Thank you, Lily.
This is
Great.
dated, and it may be a little off topic, but relative to bringing people with already having bachelor's degrees into the field, the Culinary Institute used to have a program called Advanced Culinary Arts Program. So if you finished a bachelor's degree and you had some management courses and some other pieces, you could, in a very intensive 6-month period, become a really good chef and chef manager and sous chef, ready to be moved to an executive chef. And we ran that both in Hyde Park and in California. But it brought another set of people to the industry who had graduated and didn't have anything like it. And Matt, you might want to find out more about that as just another wrinkle of another way to do something. You know, because we got to have, there's so many different students or possible students, and everyone has their own particular interest needs. We need multiple pathways, you know? Ask Kristen, she knows she just ran a country club for the summer just because she had nothing else to do with herself, you know?
I like to keep busy. Actually, at FDU, we had a very aggressive veterans program, and we took a lot of the credits from the government, from their experience in the armed services, and that was very successful. I probably added about 10% to the enrollment, and they were all adult learners, which meant that they brought a lot of maturity into the classroom, which really helped with some of the less mature students. So, and we did a lot of, we had a continuing ed program and a certificate program as well, but they were not as successful. They were not as well supported by the rest of the university. So, if I might, I have a question for our panelists. Thank you so much for coming today. This has been great. I was wondering if there's, I think it's the elephant in the room, and I know it's kind of beyond your scope, but I think our challenge is just general public awareness of industry careers and what parents think of a hospitality career, which is super important because more and more these students don't really have any idea what they want to be. And or are you going into the high schools? Is there a part of your operation or a part of the way you connect with the public high schools that can help us or that we can learn from?
Yes, I've actually visited several high schools just in the last week. We have a curriculum called Pro Start Foundations, which is provided through the National Restaurant Association that a lot of the tech schools and some of the regular high schools utilize on campus, generally intended for junior seniors. And then they have a representative, Chef Wilfred Barrio, who toodles around and hits everybody in the state that utilizes that curriculum. And I've been shadowing him a little bit, speaking to some of his classes. But we're also targeting some of the more umbrella type organizations. So we have JMG, Jobs for Maine Graduates, which is part of a national group. We have Junior Achievement in Maine, which is also part of a national, Skills USA, Job Corps, a lot of these groups that have connections that are more wide-based. We're targeting them as well, and just did a virtual event Wednesday of this week with Junior Achievement to allow them to talk to our membership and expose them to what they can do to get involved with, because their particular platform is primarily volunteer based. Somebody would come in and help educate some of the kids that are attached to the program, but that gives them the opportunity to give those students exposure to their industry, because all their stories are going to be based on what they've done. And as you probably have experienced, a lot of kids kind of gravitate towards what they were exposed to. If the only thing they ever get exposed to is the hospitality industry, then when they graduate and somebody keeps poking about what do you want to do in life, I'm like, well, that's the only thing I've ever heard about, so let's do that. I believe they gave us a statistic that I think it was 90%. Was that right, Matt? Of kids that have a junior achievement counselor from the business world move into that counselor's occupation or industry. It was a very high statistic. That was a national statistic. I'm not sure what it is locally here in Maine, but that was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and we also in the chat are getting parents and guidance counselors.
Yes,
as
that's always
big
a challenge.
Influencers.
Yeah. I had a call, a webinar like this with some students from Wiscasset High School. The guidance their guidance counselor had set it up, and so we talked about what hospitality careers were available, and Derek's on the right track with that. That's something, Kirsten, that we'll be moving forward to more, I think.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I wish there was a bigger push at the national level as well.
You know, Matt, one thought, and you've probably done it and I missed the first few minutes, is the more information we can provide about career patterns, not necessarily just ladders, but sideway patterns in video format or a format that, you know, when we all got stuff, it came in a booklet, we loved it. These people come and it's a booklet. What's a booklet? You know, I don't know what a booklet is, but if we could have really good short video things and put them out a lot of places, you know, you could do it for Maine, but you could, the reality is this positions are all over the country, you know, we could put it out in lots of places and QR code it. Cheryl, you're absolutely right, but make it so they're drawn to it. You know, put it on social media, put it on Facebook, and show there's all these different kind of options that people have not a single, they don't know what they're talking about. And the words are even strange. What is this sue something, right? Isn't that money, right? You know, I mean, we got to change the way people think about that vocabulary. We got to change the way people think about those options. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I think I would just echo what Derek just mentioned about the Great Maine Comeback program that we ran this year, the ad campaign. Fred, that was an $80,000 campaign that we put forward with help and with financial assistance from Steve Lyons with the State Department of Tourism. So we appreciate that. But that was a campaign exactly like that. We went to restaurants and we went to hotels and we took videos and interviews, just little snippets of younger employees in that industry. So I think that we were trying to do exactly that.
Is there a way for Hospitality Maine to send it to the NRA or AHLEI or give it to ICHRIE so we can put it out across the, I mean.
Yep, it's still housed on our website.
Yeah.
Put it out. We got a lot of good stuff buried, but if we don't put it out, you know, and the last thing if we put it and we park it on the web, oh dear, no one will find it. No one will notice it. You know, we got to push it, not pull it.
Yeah.
Fred, I think you're getting nominated to lead a TikTok campaign on this in the chat. But Jeff, I see Jeff has his hand up and then Cheryl.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say, I think one of the things that when we talk about the guidance counselors, and I'm picking up on the comment that you made, Fred, about the whole vocational nature of what people think our industry is. And then we need to connect it more to that it's a business and to the business aspect.
Absolutely.
You know, all our students get rigorous business courses, and it's no different than an accounting major in a business school or finance or whatever. And I think that's sometimes where we fall short with parents is they think of that, you know, well, you're good with your hands, like you said, Fred, so we'll put you in the kitchen.
It's actually even harder than an accounting major.
I agree. And I think that's one of the things. And I mean, I go back to when I'm dating myself to the 80s, when I was in college, you know, it was the thing to do. It was a cool major. People, I mean, we never had issue with students. Granted, there were less programs, but still, there were never any problems. And so, but, you know, in the last 10 years, STEM has taken over. It's what everybody knows. It's what's getting pushed in high schools. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of us have experienced, a lot of students come through our programs because they started in STEM and hated it because their parents push them that way. And they're like, this is not what I want. And I think the more that we can do that and change the image of what people think our industry is, and we all, a lot of times we're called School of Hotel and Restaurant Management, but we evolved to hospitality. And I think people know what a hotel and a restaurant is, but they don't know what hospitality is. And so that's kind of added to this whole problem that
They
we're
also
facing.
don't know what service is.
Correct. So I think, you know, I think the guidance counselors is the key, because these are the individuals that are talking to students who don't know what they want to do at, you know, 16 and 17 and giving them direction. And I mean, you know, no one was talking about being a nurse or a doctor back in my time. It was, you know, a lot of it was business. And I think that's just something we have to get back to the basics of that as well.
I just want to thank you for this program. This has been eye-opening and interesting. And I wanted to circle back to you. There was a conversation briefly about ProStart, and I think all of our states have ProStart in the high schools. And we have a pretty well-developed ProStart program in Delaware. I think it's been going longer than Pennsylvania. But I find there's a disconnect between the ProStart students and going to college. And I didn't know if you saw the same thing. And I didn't know if anybody had a strategy to attract those ProStart students that are attracted to our industry because it speaks to them intrinsically. How do we get them to see that pathway into high school, into college? I think ProStart, at least from what I see, pushes the pathway from high school to work. And I didn't know if any of you had thoughts on how we can leverage ProStart, or if it's working better in your state that those students do go to college from ProStart. And even Matt and Derek, if you have thoughts about that from your perspective.
From the engagements that I've had so far, I've noticed that many of the schools pick and pluck snippets out of the ProStart curriculum to suit what they want to do locally, as opposed to taking the curriculum for the whole 2 years as a comprehensive piece. And from what I understand, if they do the entire thing, there's a certificate at the end that actually leads to a scholarship, but so few students are targeted to do that entire piece and get that scholarship that the whole college component of it kind of disappears into whatever they've turned it into for their local school. So that's definitely a challenge. It was designed a certain way, but very few places utilize it that way.
Derek, you probably realize that shoehorning it into a curriculum with limitations is really hard. You know, it takes a chunk of stuff, right?
Yeah, to get the whole piece that it was designed for.
Yeah, you got to buy into the curriculum structure when you've got local politics about which courses and what schedule time and facilities, and you know that it's Hospitality Maine issue too.
Oh yeah, that's why so few end up doing it that route.
I was a judge for ProStart in Massachusetts and for Rhode Island for a short while, and I would say that the students were so they always got offers for scholarships from CIA and Johnson & Wales, and those were kind of the limited options for them. And I would say that part of the problem with doing that is that we're not giving them the full breadth of the industry. So something that I've noticed at Cornell is that a lot of students, they love hospitality and they love being in it, but they never want to work in the kind of ground level stuff because the pay isn't there. And I had one student who said to me, he's great. He's great at operations. And he was a ProStart kid, but he was like, I'm going to graduate with like $200,000 worth of debt. I can't go into the industry in the way that I want to. So he's going into asset management. And I was like, cool, we lost another one to real estate. And so all of these other industries that really value the soft skills that these students have of being, people, are saying like, okay, we're going to hire you guys because we can teach you numbers and all of that stuff, but we like that you can talk to clients and things like that. So what we've noticed at Cornell is just that all of the students, like Goldman Sachs doesn't even go to our business school anymore. They just come and poach all the hospitality kids and they offer these huge packages, and all the students are like, well, I can't move. And I'm locked into debt. And I get that my school's also really expensive, but the only ones that go to operations end up going to the Four Seasons or to Hillstone. And I'm like, Hillstone, while offering great opportunities, it is an unrealistic metric for money. in the industry. So I'm like, those are golden handcuffs. You will never be able to leave Hillstone because you will never be able to live off of anything less than what Hillstone makes, which arguably those managers make more than anyone in academia. I've made poor choices, clearly, but that's fine.
No, you made good choices, the right choices, Lily.
But you make a good point, and you know, structurally, I think our industry has some serious issues that they're not dealing with, which is pay and how to treat people, and
Work-life balance.
I don't think, yeah, work-life balance, which we can't solve. But I find it frustrating, and I know we're starting to do things about it at ICHRIE. They had a meeting with AHLA, but they forget about colleges. They forget about, you know, this is an area that you can get a degree in higher ed and go into management and have a full career through that pathway. And I find it frustrating.
I'm going to add on to that. We've lost the whole focus of what's 2 + 2 + 2. And everybody is working in their own silos. ProStart's doing their thing. NAF academies are doing their things. And I think if we're going to be successful and we're going to get through the challenges that came out from the pandemic, ICHRIE has to focus upon the pathways from the high schools to the community colleges to the universities, build these 2 + 2 + 2 agreements with ProStart, with HTM, with NAFs and the Academies of Hospitality and Tourism, with CCAP. We've got to put the focus into how do we link and become an organization that is working together for our students to get them through the pathways.
David, can I volunteer you to offer? Can I volunteer you to offer a session at NENA so that you can talk about the pros and cons and the structural issues around 2 + 2 + 2 + 2? Because we have a lot of people who are new to NENA and new to ICHRIE for whom that 2 + 2 + 2 + 2, what's that? But it's a fundamental concept of how we work with students and how we work with matriculation. And you would be wonderful at it. So I volunteer you to do that presentation. And Noelle's here so she can make sure that it's on the committee. Well, we lost her.
So Fred, just let you know, Fred, that there's a group of us from community colleges. They're going to be submitting 4 presentations.
Wonderful.
In a conference. And one of those will work on what we call the alphabet soup. And how do we bring the alphabet soup together? So.
Well, I think this has been a great way to pull this discussion that we've had, which, you know, at the high level on how to work together, to some really good ideas at the local level, to a concept for our NENA conference to keep the discussion going. So thank you all. Good work in bringing us all around. I want to thank Matt and Derek again. We have 2 minutes left. Is there any last questions or thoughts or comments to wrap everything up? Yeah, Matt.
Tracy, I have an odd question for the educators on the call. Tracy and I were at the Visit Portland board meeting about 6 weeks ago, and the subject of cannabis, about how engaged Visit Portland wants to get with cannabis companies. And that's a question we're also dealing with at Hospitality Maine. My question is that something that you're talking about from an educational point of view about offering cannabis courses? And could that potentially increase your enrollment? Because hospitality, those cannabis companies are coming after hospitality workers, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I know maybe not in every state, but in Maine and many, cannabis is legal. And so cannabis tourism is a really hugely growing industry. And so, yeah, anybody sort of directly relating to that at this point, or has that come up? because it has, like he said, and with our Visit Portland, with the organizations, you know.
I can't say that I am.
Maybe that. Go ahead, Donna.
I don't have any like firsthand knowledge of it. I know that we have a very popular cannabis certificate, online certificate program in New Jersey because of the approval of both recreational and medical marijuana in our state. So that has been very successful. There has been spin-off continuing education courses in cannabis, including a tourism element of that. And we're doing it for the New Jersey Travel Industry Association as a segment as well. So I cannot speak firsthand, but I know that we are actively engaged.
Well, maybe an upcoming NENA Rise and Grind session.
I would get you the talent, sure.
Is that experiential, or is that just going to be like a presentation? I was just wondering.
Hey, everyone's in the comfort of their own home and can.
What is the C word anyways? I've never heard of Canada. Is that what we're talking about, Canada?
It's legal. We're in a state where it's legal, coming and going.
Yeah, and I know that at educational events now for the cannabis industry, they're not giving CEUs, they're issuing brownie points.
Okay, that is we are stopping on that one. That's great. I hope everyone has the happiest holidays, can get a nice break, and we really look forward to connecting in the new year.
Thank you for having us.
Nice job,
you guys.
Tracy. Nice
Thank you.
job.
Thank you.
Thanks, team.
Thanks so much.